All right, Larry. Well, I see a number of folks are joining in, so we can probably just kind of kick things off here and get the session started today. So I just wanted to welcome everybody. Good morning, and thank you for joining the team here at SRM today. We're certainly delighted to have you with us for this fourth installment in our series on cryptocurrency trends. Today, as you know, we'll be covering crypto hacks, scams, and other security considerations that are important, certainly in this ever-changing environment. So my name is Neil Doherty, and I'm the VP of Marketing and Communications at SRM, and I'll be assisting our presenter during today's session. As just kind of a couple housekeeping items, please do use the Q&A feature here in Zoom at the bottom of the app to send us any questions you might have during the session. We'll be capturing those. We'll call them out during the webinar if it makes sense, or potentially at the end of the session today. We'll also leave some time for any additional questions you may have. That's why we've got you till 45. We are recording the webinar, and as always, we'll share it with you and any registrants who may miss the live session. So those are kind of the main things that I wanted to start with. So I'll introduce our presenter today. It's Larry Pruss, who you may recognize if you've joined us previously. Larry's the managing director of our crypto advisory practice here at SRM. He advises financial institutions on strategies to turn digital currencies from a threat to an opportunity. And Larry is a featured speaker on the topic throughout the country. He spent a significant amount of time here in 2022 educating board members and other influencers in the financial services field on the topic of cryptocurrencies. Certainly, we're happy to have him with us. Patty Webbles is also with us today, who's part of the SRM team, and you may hear from her intermittently or see her in the chat or in the Q&A. Patty is the SVP of Client Development at SRM and works with Larry to provide crypto services, education, strategic planning, implementation. And she's a certified cryptocurrency expert through the Blockchain Council, and also a significant amount of time spent as a speaker in 2022, talking with a lot of FI leaders about digital assets and the larger opportunity ahead. So with that, I'll pass it over to Larry, and he can get us going today as we discuss security considerations for crypto and digital assets. So pass it over to you, Larry.
Thank you, Neil, and good morning, everyone. Hello virtually. I guess I'll start with a quote from Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War. He said, "Know thy enemy and know yourself." This is very applicable to cryptocurrencies and your customers and or members. When we know what assets our adversaries are likely to target, we can better focus on effectively protecting them. Hacks and scams are very common in the crypto space. Crypto and associated blockchain is fast-moving technology. It's not well understood. And it's one whose value generally sits in plain view for all to see on the blockchain. So it makes it an easy target. Case in point, hackers have made off with about $14 billion in cryptocurrency last year. And that's according to a recent report from Chainalysis. Before I go too far, just want to state that we're not providing any investment advice. Everything here should be considered informational, educational, or entertainment purposes. Neil did mention we have a blockchain team here at SRM. And for those of you who are not familiar with strategic resource management, we launched our digital asset advisory team at the end of last year with the goal of helping our clients make decisions about these emerging technologies, and in many cases, launching digital asset solutions for their customers and our members. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the risks associated with digital assets, in particular, illicit activities, scams, and hacks. So as more financial institutions adopt cryptocurrencies and digital assets as product solutions, they're going to need to be aware of the drawbacks. Cryptocurrency, like traditional currencies, are leveraged by criminals, and the complexity of the space lends itself well to scams and fraud. Before I go too far, I want to recognize Chainalysis. I always get that tripped up on that. Chainalysis for their 2022 crypto crime report, which I leveraged as a source for this presentation. So illicit activity in cryptocurrency is certainly common, but it's significantly less than what we see with cash. While stolen funds and scams make up the vast majority of this activity, what we often hear about from media reports is about money laundering and ransomware. Overall, cyber criminals have laundered about $33 billion worth of cryptocurrency since 2017. Well, that seems like a big number. The Office for Drugs and Crime from the UN Office for Drugs and Crime, estimates that between 800 billion and 2 trillion of fiat currency is laundered each year. That represents as much as 5% of global GDP. For comparison, money laundering accounted for just 0.05% of all cryptocurrency transaction volume in 2021. So again, a lot more illicit activity in kind of cash and fiat currencies than we see in cryptocurrencies. The biggest difference, though, between fiat and cryptocurrency-based money laundering is due to the inherent transparency of the blockchain. We can more easily trace how criminals move cryptocurrency between wallets and exchanges in their efforts to convert funds into cash. Many large money laundering operations and high-risk crypto exchanges are run out of Russia, specifically Moscow City, Russia. One of these exchanges, known as Suex, was sanctioned in September 2021 by the US Treasury for its alleged role in ransomware attacks. Ransomware is a type of malware, threatens to publish the victim's personal data or perpetually block access unless a ransom is paid. If you've ever been an attack or a subject of a ransomware attack, it can be pretty frustrating. Some ransomware is for financial gain. I'd say probably most of it is. And some of it's just for geopolitical attacks. The big difference there is geopolitical attacks offer no way to get the files back. So if they're offering to give you your files back, you can rest assured it's not a geopolitical attack. Probably the most famous ransomware attack was the 2021 Colonial Pipeline hack. That took down the largest fuel pipeline in the US, led to shortages across the East Coast, and was the result of a single compromised password from a dark web leak. In that hack, the company ended up paying the hacker group, DarkSide, about 75 Bitcoin or $4.4 million in value at that time. And then in June of 2021, Department of Justice announced that they actually recovered about 80% of that ransomware payment. So it's interesting. We're starting to see more recovery of ransomware, especially as the authorities get better of tracing the stuff across the blockchain and also knowing who's typically involved in these attacks. So hacks and scams are also very common in the cryptocurrency space, as I mentioned before. First, we're going to cover some of the more famous hacks, and then we're going to cover some of the more common scams. So number of hacks in 2021 and one big hack in early 2022. We've since had a bunch of smaller attacks, and this is going to continue. The first one I'll cover is the Poly network attack. That one was interesting because the attackers returned nearly all of the money. Nearly $611 million was stolen. But apparently that's a lot of money to try to cash out, and they actually had a lot of trouble trying to move that and cash it out. The theft exploited some vulnerability in the Poly network's code, which allowed them to transfer funds to their own accounts. The Poly network pleaded with the hacker to return the remaining funds, which they ultimately did after being granted about $500,000 as a bounty for helping the Poly network identify a flaw in its systems. The next one, Bitmark, which was $196 million loss. That one was a result of a security breach caused by a stolen private key, which affected two of his hot wallets. Fortunately, their other assets were safe and unharmed. The Cream Finance attack for $148 million. Those attackers are believed to have found a vulnerability in the platform's lending system. They were doing something called flash loaning at the time. And they used it to steal all of Cream's assets and tokens that were running on the Ethereum blockchain. Vulcan Forge hack or loss of $140 million. Someone exploited their servers, got their NFT wallet credentials, and used it to extract the private keys of MyForge users. So that was unfortunate. Badger Finance, $121 million. That hack appeared to be an API key that was for Cloudflare that was compromised, and that was believed to be a result of maliciously injected snippet provided by Cloudflare workers after an earlier phishing incident. And then the big one, 2022, $622 million. That hack of Axie Affinity, which is like an online gaming platform, appears to be the result of hacked private keys. That hack has also been blamed subsequently on North Korea's hacking team called the Lazarus Group. But what you can see here is that, of these kind of exploits, a couple of them were due to bad smart contracts. Most of them were due to stolen private keys. And as I probably, if you've heard me speak before, your private keys are what gives you access to your cryptocurrency if you're storing them on an unsecure server, which certainly would not be a great place to store them, they can be exposed to hacking. A lot of times, human beings being infallible can fall victim to being tricked into giving those keys over. You'll hear some about that and some of the scams I'm going to talk about in a minute. But again, a lot of big hacks in 2021. 2022 is looking like it's going to be even a bigger year for hacks, and we'll continue to see this as cryptocurrency kind of evolves. So what types of crypto scams are out there? And we're dealing not only with hacks and exploits, but we're dealing with these scams. Much of this is being facilitated by social media. We'll talk about that. But the scams I'm going to talk about today are the traditional Ponzi scheme, pump and dump scams, which are similar to kind of the penny stock world. If anyone's familiar with that kind of investing, that's pretty common there. Fake celebrity endorsements, you've probably seen a few of these if you're in the crypto space. A lot of them use Elon Musk's name. Fake exchanges, fake apps, fake press releases, and phishing and spoofing. So let's talk about why these scams are happening. A lot of it is due to social media facilitating these scams. FTC, or the Federal Trade Commission, found that social media platforms like Meta and Instagram have really become the go-to place for scammers. 64% of all reported investment scams on social media actually involve bogus crypto payments. FTC reported in 2021, they saw 12 times higher incidents than in 2020. And the total amount of losses were up nearly 1,000%. So the losses are really growing here. Crypto exchanges or crypto scams make up the majority of investment-related online fraud. So social media is really facilitating these crypto scams, which makes sense because, often on social media, people give up an awful lot of personal information. That personal information can be used to, figure out accounts and trace you down and trick you into giving up keys and those sorts of things. Decentralized finance is also facilitating crypto scams. So I've talked before about DeFi or decentralized finance, and that what happens with DeFi is they typically remove the middlemen in typical financial sector. So normally you'd have a bank or credit union facilitating borrowing and lending, while DeFi removes them, replaces them with code and smart contracts written on public blockchains. It's a fair amount of complexity. There's also a fair amount of yield opportunities because as you remove the middleman, so to speak, both ends of the trade tend to get better pricing. But because of that complexity and because of that excitement about larger yields, that's a real dangerous combination for newbies. So now that we know that social media and complexity DeFi is making for a good scamming environment, let's discuss what are some of these scams. So as I mentioned before, Ponzi, this is probably the ones that most people have heard about before. Very common scam in traditional finance. It's also a scam in crypto. The name Ponzi actually comes from Charles Ponzi, whom in the 1920s had a financial scam based on postage stamps and arbitrage or something. But it had some legitimacy to it, but he was paying out new investors with money from, the original investors, which is kind of how these Ponzi schemes work. Usually tricked into investing into a non-existing project or a project that might have some legitimacy, usually as a get-rich-quick scam. You're paying out those original investors with new investor funds. Cryptocurrency is really ideal for this because it's not well understood and it's easy to attract investors because everyone's heard about the great, higher profits that you typically see in cryptocurrency. When I think of higher profits or higher yield, I'm thinking anything like 5 to 10%, maybe legitimate. Anything greater than that, probably not as legitimate, although, you could make the arguments for it. But Ponzi schemes is certainly one of those to watch out for. A good example of this would be OneCoin. That was probably the longest running Ponzi scheme ever witnessed, at least by the crypto industry. It was a Bulgarian fraudster. She's the crypto queen. She's still on the run. She kind of disappeared, but she ran that kind of scam between 2014 and 2019. defrauded investors of almost $6 billion, marketing OneCoin as a Bitcoin killer. And obviously OneCoin's not around anymore. It is probably worth reminding people that the largest Ponzi scheme in recent history was not a crypto Ponzi scheme, but was a traditional scheme. Bernie Madoff, his traditional investment scandal, which he made off with 64 billion investor funds. So that by far was I think the largest loss in any recent history. In fact, 64 billion due to Bernie Madoff was more money than had disappeared, what was it, 2 weeks ago as a result of kind of that stablecoin meltdown between, it was Luna and Terra Luna meltdown. So just sometimes keep in mind traditional finance also has these sorts of things going on. Pump and dump, this is the equivalent of kind of musical chairs. So scammers encourage investors, usually with social media, to buy into crypto assets, usually little known projects, usually very new projects. Based on false information, you pump up the price, get everyone excited about it. Those early investors sell their coins and disappear and leave the victims with worthless coins. Probably one of the most recent famous examples of this, I mean, this happens all the time, but it was Squid Coin, which was named after the Squid movie or something on Netflix. I never watched it, but apparently it was very popular. Well, someone launched a Squid Coin and they pumped it up, dumped it, cashed out, and disappeared with $3 million from investors. Again, that's probably one of the most common scams in crypto, and one to certainly make sure you're aware of is not to buy into the hype of the latest, greatest new coin. If it hasn't been around for a while, it's probably likely it might not be around in the near future. Next, we'll talk about fake celebrity endorsements. What happens here is scammers hijack usually a celebrity social media account, or more often than not, create fake accounts, and then say, hey, I'm Elon Musk, and I'm encouraging everyone to invest in this crypto scheme. Often they'll give you a crypto address to send money to and say, hey, I'm giving money away. I'm going to give you a 200% return if you send it in the next 20 minutes. And of course, they'll get people who will send money to it. And of course, it's not Elon Musk, and someone's taking the money and running with it. $2 million was lost to scammers who use Elon Musk's name on a Bitcoin address to make it look more trustworthy. Recently, crypto scammers have actually been using deep fake videos of Elon Musk, and I think Kathy Wood as well, to promote a fake trading platform called Bitvex, that scams deposited money. And talking about fake trading exchanges, in this case, what often happens is you'll have scammers will send you messages or emails promising access to some virtual money stored on a cryptocurrency exchange, usually in return for signing up, right? The only drawback is you have to pay a small fee. Well, the exchange usually never exists at all and you lose the money. Or the other thing we see is fake websites that look an awful lot like the real website. Good example of this would be Bitrex, and they just change the domain name just a little bit, and then basically they're just phishing and stealing logging information. So you think you're logging into your Bitrex account, and in fact you're not. You're logging into something a little bit different. And now they've got your credentials, and your cryptocurrency will disappear very quickly. So always make sure you're using the right account credential, not the right account of credentials, but the right website if you're using a website exchange. Next, we'll talk about fake apps. Apple's got something called Test Flight that allows you to kind of do beta tests of various apps. You can test 100 apps at a time. Similarly, they've got something called web clips that allow users to add widgets to home screens of iPhones and iPads. A lot of this beta testing will allow people to upload fake but legitimate, fake cryptocurrency apps to the app stores. People sign up for them, and then you enter your personal information and financial information. They often will use those apps to plant malware on the device that could steal logins. We've seen a lot with something called crypto ROM or crypto romance, where perpetrators will leverage some of those new iOS features, beta apps, to add them to victims' phones. And you kind of say, hey, look, I like you, but I want to help you out here. Here's a really great app you could use, make a lot of money. And of course, it's a fake app and you're going to lose all your money. So be cautious of fake apps, particularly beta ones that get uploaded to kind of the testing sites. Fake press releases. These were pretty interesting. Scammers often are even able to trick journalists into replicating false information. So there's a pretty popular news wire called PR Newswire. A lot of companies use it to announce, company information. Well, last year we saw this happen twice. Once with Kroger, once with Walmart. One had announced that I think it was Kroger was going to accept Bitcoin Cash, and then Walmart was going to accept Bitcoin Lite. These were both fake press releases. They got a lot of news. The price of Bitcoin Cash went up pretty fast. Same with Litecoin. Whoever was behind it cashed out. If you were lucky enough to see the price going up and cashed out, good on you. Good for you. If you weren't, some people saw it going up and said, oh my gosh, I got to get in on it, fear of missing out, and invested in Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin, only to find the price, as soon as everyone realized it was a fake press release, went right back to where it was or even lower. And obviously people could lose money. And then lastly, we've got phishing and spoofing is kind of common. Scamming. Phishing is one of those more popular forms of deception used by scammers. What they typically do is will send you text messages or emails or messages on your social media account, making it look like it's coming from a legitimate, trusted source. Often it's coming from your employer, credit card provider, bank, government official. I get a lot of times spoof phone calls from some law enforcement agency that needs to talk to me, immediately. And of course, they're going to ask for some sort of payment, usually in cryptocurrency, to make a problem go away. You usually convey a sense of urgency, so you act quickly without thinking about it. These things are almost always scams. Novel phishing technique is also called a browser and browser or bit-B attack. You can use that to exploit, basically simulate a browser window within a browser. So it looks like you've got a legitimate domain you're working with, and you could be doing a sign-in by Google or using your Facebook or Apple credentials to sign in. So it's a popular way of phishing and getting those login credentials. And so, much of the fraud and scams that we see really can be mitigated by educating our customers and members. Thus, as crypto becomes more popular, this is really an opportunity to speak to your customers and members about these risks and cement the relationship you have as their trusted advisor. I know this is a little short. We just wanted to share some of the things that we're seeing in this space and make sure that our clients and friends in the industry are aware that there are lots of scams and frauds associated with cryptocurrency. There's obviously, we talked about money laundering and ransomware as potential risks as well. So as this stuff becomes more popular, it really is an opportunity to educate people, because most of the time people are falling for these things just because, humans are infallible and we make mistakes and they're tricked into giving over things like credentials. So want to thank you for your time. With that, we'll turn it back to Neil. I think there may be some questions in the chat, see if there's anything we can answer.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. And just polling the group here for some questions. Haven't had anything come up specifically just yet. But I guess I would ask, of all the things that you sort of went over today, is there something that you look at based on some of these hack scams that you feel is potentially the most dangerous in the long term, or something that will continue to kind of really dominate the scenario here? I'm just curious if you kind of think about it in terms of going forward and some of the bigger concerns that you may have, especially as some of our friends in the financial services space look to adopt these solutions for their own customers and members.
So I'd say pump and dump schemes, also known kind of as rug pulls, really give cryptocurrency a bad name. You've heard me say before, there's probably 20,000 digital tokens out there. Vast majority of them are worthless. Anyone can create a digital token, usually on the Ethereum network, and you can promote it, right? And these things are usually fly-by-night operations. They don't last very long. Sometimes people are aware that they're basically part of a pump and dump scheme, and they're just trying to ride that price up before they kind of pull the rug on you and get out. I would encourage people not to participate in those things, not to give those tokens your attention. Really focus on the legitimate ones in the marketplace, because a lot of people are going to get hurt. Ultimately, we're going to see legislation come in. They're going to crack down on those kind of fake coins and pump and dump schemes, which will be good for the industry. But in the meantime, we're going to you'll give the industry a bad name. And there's a lot of legitimate, strong technology here that could be hurt, that could would be normally adopted by financial services industry to make our industry more transparent, more efficient, fairer, more accessible. And that's the promise of cryptocurrencies and blockchains and digital assets. We just have to be really careful that we crack down on kind of the scammy elements of this environment. And then just, again, long-term considerations with money laundering. I mean, money laundering is as old as money being in existence, and cryptocurrency is no different that way. But it's good to know that the blockchain is a lot more transparent, a lot easier to trace, and that criminals really aren't as attracted to the money laundering element of cryptocurrency, say traditional cash. That said, it does exist. And one of the considerations with cryptocurrency that everyone has to be aware of is, because of the semi-quasi-anonymous nature of it, is, do you know who your counterparty is, who's on the other end of that trade? And is it a sanctioned country? Is it a criminal? Has that cryptocurrency come from an exchange just known for illicit activities? Those are the kind of things that trip up financial institutions. And that's one of the reasons why we don't see, like, at least initial implementations of crypto or digital assets in the traditional finance space, which is usually through mobile banking app for kind of buy, sell, hold for customers and members, why those are closed loop systems, right? So we know where the money comes from when they purchase cryptocurrency. They're buying it, they're getting it from their checking account. They can sell that crypto, they can hold that cryptocurrency, they can sell it, and it goes back to a checking account. We will, over time, I think see those open up for maybe purchases, like uses at retail, retail merchants, but they're going to probably be ones limited to the US to, again, make sure that you know who that counterparty is. We saw similar with PayPal, where PayPal initially just had kind of buy, sell, hold options for cryptocurrency, and then opened it up for all the merchants because they knew who those merchants were and felt okay about allowing their customers to use cryptocurrency to make those purchases. As we start to think about things like yield within the DeFi space, and as financial institutions finding a way to leverage that DeFi space, which is truly efficient, to provide maybe higher yields, and say a high yield interest account could offer our customers or members, we have to be very cautious that either that's come through some sort of a white listed agency or exchange that has made sure that this, again, not knowing who your counterparty at those funds are legitimate on the other end of that trade, and or we're just going to have to be very cautious how we approach that DeFi space. But throughout all of that, and throughout all that complexity, we're going to continue to see scams, and fraudsters are going to take advantage of that. We just have to kind of keep ahead of them, be aware of it, and understand that when we see these things that happen, like hacks or something shows up in the media, it's not an indictment of the underlying technology or an indictment of the asset class. It's an indictment of human behavior, and that's just who we are. We're easily tricked into giving things like passwords and stuff like that. Of course, everyone should monitor and minimize their social media footprint. It becomes very easy to figure out, mother's maiden name, and your favorite pet's name, and your friend from high school's name, common things that people will use to verify who you are for passwords. So I know that was a long-winded answer. I felt good giving it since we had a little bit of time.
No, I think that's a great point, and obviously the point about our human nature as well in terms of these types of things. But I think maybe just one other question. You mentioned kind of the fact that social media is playing a big role in these scams, and 64% is a pretty big number in terms of the reported scams having something to do or a connection to cryptocurrency payments. Do you, and if you don't know the answer to it, that's okay too, but are you aware of any additional steps that these platforms are taking to avoid this, or do you feel that the FTC, beyond just reporting these things, is going to put some more stringent requests or kind of regulation on these social media networks?
Yeah, I mean, social media networks are aware of it, and they're trying the best they can to kind of crack down on this stuff. A lot of these scams happen through just normal outreaches on social media, and then suddenly you've met someone and they take you to a private chat where some of that stuff can't be monitored, right? And then you're tricked into entering into a relationship or entering into giving up those keys. And then it comes down to, well, prosecution, and often the victim is kind of ashamed that they got tricked into it, not willing to report it. I mean, people have to be willing to report these things, willing to prosecute, and often because of the anonymous nature of social media. I mean, you can make a fake social media account. It's easy for criminals to kind of hide behind the screen. So, I know that the social media companies are working on trying to minimize this. Law enforcement's getting better at prosecuting these things. It's so prevalent. There's so many opportunities for this. It's so easy to kind of hide behind a screen. It's a lot easier to steal money that way than going out and pickpocketing someone or tricking them into something else. So we're going to continue to see it. We are going to see regulation in this space. There are legitimate concerns about money laundering, and we're going to see regulations around that as well. But all of that's going to help further legitimize this space and will help eliminate some of the scamminess that we're currently seeing. It's a nascent asset class. We always see this with nascent asset classes and nascent technologies. As this stuff matures, we'll see less of it, and this will just become, again, we'll see the normal sort of criminal illicit activity that we do with any sort of financial instrument.
Awesome. Well, thank you for covering those questions. I think that probably covers it for today. So we just want to thank everyone for attending. We certainly hope it was educational, insightful, as a lot of these have been over the previous months. And we really do enjoy continuing to bring this type of programming. So keep an eye out for more in 2022. We'll certainly be following up on this topic and others that are obviously growing in importance as it relates to digital assets. And just want to thank Larry again for taking the time to put this together. Look for a follow-up email from us with a recording of today's webinar. And definitely reach out to Larry or Patty or anyone in your SRM contact group that if you want to talk more about your company's plans, if you have any needs in the crypto space, just want to talk shop, our team is very willing to do that and would be very, very much available to have those types of conversations. So otherwise, again, keep an eye out for a follow-up email with the recording, and we hope everybody has a good day. And again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out to me or Larry or anyone else on the team here. So I think that'll do it. Larry, thanks again, and have a good day, everybody.
Take care.
Take care now.